Hi, everyone. Welcome to our red belt level. And these are common questions we hear at the strategic optimizer level, which is what we call our red belt. So just as a reminder, by now you should have watched our theory video. The strategic optimizer is our red belt level. And this is where we are starting to see our people saying, ChatGPT or AI isn't just saving me time, it's giving my vision room to grow. And the insight here, your internal AI fluency is a competitive advantage for your entire team. And we want you to practice and gain confidence helping your team grow with AI. So for clarity, we're going to define how AI should be used across all roles. And growth, we're going to establish a cultural foundation where innovation and safety are walking hand in hand. And at this level, people are asking, how do I ensure my team is as efficient as I am, and we all speak the same language? So in our AI mastery belt map, each stage of mastery is a necessary step, and we call it a frequency. It's a deliberate rhythm towards true integration and innovation. So by this point, you are at stage 7 out of our 8 belts have been accomplished. We have 2 more belts to go. And yes, stage 7 is our red belt strategic optimizer. So in this, I'm going to answer the 10 most frequently asked questions at this belt level. Question 1, how do I align all of my AI systems with my broader business strategy and goals? And this is actually a fun question. And the reason I say it's a fun question is because everything we do must align with our business strategy and goals. So one of the things we do, we've talked about this before in other levels, but I will bring it up again. One of our primary tools we have is what we call our core objectives. And core objectives, you can call it what you want, whether it's vision, it's your mission statement. Our core objectives are, and we always have 3. There's a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. So our core objectives, basically the goal is to help people understand where they are in business and where they want to go. So a core objective in our language is basically, if you think about it, anywhere from a 3 to 5 to 10 year big picture vision. And the way we describe it, it is the North Star. This is how we as a collective answer the question, are we succeeding? Yes or no? So we start with core objectives. And really, the core objectives are the non-negotiable North Star that guide us forward. They're principle driven rather than actual tactical driven. And basically, these are the things that shouldn't change no matter what. So for me, my core objective is to spread mastery. I do that through helping people learn, helping people teach. And of course, then we get into the innovation and the optimization of our mastery field, which in this case is ChatGPT. So what we're looking for is the core objectives, the values that drive us forward. Now, once we have that, I use a couple of custom GPTs, and they're available to all of our members in the Pharos Digital Dojo. We create strategic plans. So let's call the core objectives are long-term, 5 to 10 year. A strategic plan in my world, I have a combination of the next 90 days that lead to the next year, and then up to the next 3 years. So I always have a strategic plan, and the goal of the strategic plan is to help me move progressively, consistently towards my core objectives. So I have a strategic plan for the next 90 days, for the rest of the year, and then up to 3 years. And what I do is every 90 days, I focus on 3 core areas. So every 90 days, I have one priority in each of my 3 core areas. One is attract. How do I find new prospects for my business? The second is convert. How do I turn those prospects into clients? And then the third project I always do is deliver. How do I deliver wow through white glove services? So I've created a framework, and we teach this in our courses. And of course, we teach you how to customize it to your needs. But basically, the framework is really simple. Everything we do is guided by our core objectives. And from there, we then use our strategic plan, which is the more recent, more current, the next 90 days and so on. And then from there, we create an action plan. And what we use is the requirements for our core objectives, our strategic plan, and our action plan. That determines how we use our AI systems. And in the red belt, if you do nothing else, let's pretend once every 90 days you worked on one project for attract, convert, and deliver, one project each. My goal is every 90 days, your business is going to have one of 3 areas optimized. So you're always working towards how can we improve the customer, the attraction stage? How do we improve the conversion stage? How do we optimize the deliver stage? So that's what I do, and that's what we teach in the Digital Dojo. Question 2, how can I use AI to diagnose friction points, not just fix surface problems? Okay, this is where we have fun. I will admit to being a bit of a nerd. I love systems and processes. And further, I love root cause analysis and the Pareto principle. So as you will hear often, I have a team. My team of custom GPTs internally, I built it for myself. I now share it with people in my digital dojo. They're called Catalyst Crew. And so, believe it or not, I have an entire team of custom GPTs. One is really focused on implementing the Toyota 5 Whys. And basically, we're asking questions until we get to the root cause. So that's one of my tools. Another that I use is the Pareto principle. And quite frankly, if we interview our team, we interview clients, if we look at our data, we can often find friction points that are hiding in plain sight. And the key is we don't just solve the problem that we think we have, we solve the problem that is actually causing the friction. So I have a diagnostic tool. We do a lot of analysis. We use tools from the consulting world. Some of my favorites include the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We may just interview employees. And also, you've heard me talk about Chet Holmes and the Ultimate Sales Machine. There's actually an amazing formula in there, a format for running a workshop internally to identify and solve friction points. And if we're really, really stuck, we always have access to another one of my favorite tools, which is the key frustration process from eMyth, from the team at eMyth. And basically the idea is we get people to identify the challenges, the friction, the frustration, and then we use our various Catalyst crew members to confirm the problem. And really, we are not solving the surface problem. We are going straight to the root cause. And that's where ChatGPT and the custom GPTs can help us identify the friction points. Now, this is always about you are the adult in the conversation. You need to trust and verify. So the other thing that we do, and this is how we actually see incremental improvement, is using Pareto principle and our eliminate, automate, delegate. Again, we're all about frameworks here. We use the tools to propose experiments using the scientific method. We identify what we think the friction point is. We identify what we think the fixes are, and then we test to verify. Question 3, which metrics actually matter for long-term optimization and growth? This is probably going to be the question you hate my answer to, and I'm okay with that. The answer is it depends. And what I mean by that, I'm not being vague or evasive, but it really truly depends on what your business actually specifically needs. So for me, I look at what drives the cash flow in my business. What do I need to measure to bring in cash? And then I'm looking at what behavior do I want repeated, and what metrics can I measure so that I can reward the behavior and have it repeated. So that sounds a little vague, but as an example, with the Pharos Digital Dojo, I built this business to be 100% referral based, and I built it to ensure mastery. So one of my long-term metrics, which I will work out what my current short-term metrics are, but the reality is my long-term number one, have I succeeded metric is number of graduates who make it to the black belt or double black belt level and start mentoring other people. Now, if that was my only metric, I would go a little crazy because success is a long way out in terms of being measured. So short term, what I'm looking at is, are people completing the courses that I've created? Are they getting the results that I promised? And my number one short-term metric is, are they bringing their friends, family, colleagues to learn about the material I'm teaching? So that's what I mean by metrics will be unique to your business. Most businesses, in my opinion, are too short-term, or their metrics are too vague. One of the things I would always look at, and this is critical for a lot of people just starting out, is your business paying you, the owner, the founder, enough money to justify the time, energy, attention, and money you're sinking into the business? And it sounds almost harsh, but if your business is not feeding you, how long can you go on feeding it until you need to say enough's enough? And I personally believe that the majority of businesses that fail because of cash flow issues. So I'm going to be really blunt with you. Cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. If it's not making enough money to pay you to keep going, I would seriously question, what should we be doing? What should we be optimizing? Now, I recognize in startup mode, you might have some slow months, but I would encourage you to put cash flow as a top priority so that you're never, ever at the point where you personally are starving for cash and you have to go get a job or something else to keep paying the bills. And I've seen this over and over, so you can argue with me if you want, but I would say that the cash flow coming into your business, the velocity of it, the quantity of it, is probably the most important metrics. Once the cash flow is taken care of, then you can look at things like impact and legacy and all that. But short term, if you don't have cash flow, you will not stick around long enough to have that long-term legacy. Question 4, how do I use AI to improve decision-making, not just execution? This is, in my humble opinion, the most exciting time to be alive in business, because we have access to ChatGPT and other similar tools. And I really do believe that decision making is a natural byproduct of good systems. And we talked about this in other belt levels. For every system we build, every process we have KPIs and we have metrics that we're measuring to determine success. And what I like about this is ChatGPT can help us really refine and laser focus the metrics we're tracking, and it can help us understand what the impact of those metrics are. And so what I do a lot, yes, I use systems to make sure I'm following processes and getting things done consistently. But I've built out several metrics, custom GPTs, that their metrics is about decision making, quality, and again, I've got metrics for that. But the reality is, with ChatGPT, you can use frameworks like the Pareto principle, help me identify the 1% that gives me 50% of my gain, help me eliminate the 1% that's causing 50% of my drag. ChatGPT allows us to see patterns, and I will say this, most people see a few patterns if they're lucky in life. I can probably hold a dozen patterns in my head at a time, but ChatGPT can hold millions, if not billions. So ChatGPT is amazing at finding nuanced patterns that maybe you or I miss. One of the things I like to do is, if you've got a support ticket system, whether it's for technical support or help desk, whatever, the tickets, you can analyze them at minutia. You can analyze the language, the tone. You can do sentiment analysis. So ChatGPT, literally, if you think about it, decades ago, we would spend millions of dollars on getting this fine-tuned data. ChatGPT produces it now in seconds. So the key, and I'll come back to the core objectives repeatedly, our core objectives are our North Star. I have one usually that overrides everything, and that is, we must add value to our clients at every stage. If we're not adding value, we do not ship it, we do not share it, we do not produce it. So that's what I do with everything. If it doesn't add value, we don't ship it. So AI can help me really consciously design, what do I mean by value? What would my client value in this interaction? How can I increase their perception of value? And spoiler alert, value has nothing to do with what you think it does. It has everything to do with what your clients actually see and perceive. So how do we help them understand the value we deliver, and how do we deliver the value that they actually want? Question 5. What's the best way to layer human judgment and artificial intelligence in my leadership process? So I will share what I do, and then I will give you some thoughts on how you can adapt it. I have, at any given time, well, I have multiple custom GPTs, but in this case, I have 4 that are highly relevant. One is high-level visionary. They're at the 30,000-foot view. They're looking down on the entire world, and they can see everything at once. The next level is the 10,000-foot. So it's a strategic layer, but getting into the management of things, the leadership of things. The top level, I call it my visionary level. It has zero responsibility other than to keep in mind, this is the big picture vision that we have. So it's obsessed with our core objectives and making sure everything we do meets the core objectives. Then the second layer is, I call it, it's high level. You know, if we were looking at an organization, it would probably be senior vice presidents or something like that. It is still strategic. It's less about the vision for the future and more about the vision for how do we make the strategy serve the vision. And then I get into what I call a tactical level 3. It's tactical and strategic. And this is kind of where you would find middle management. And basically, the idea is this layer is about practical action steps. It's still got a strategic view to the future, but it's looking more at who can do this, how do we do this. It's about managing resources and juggling things. And then the final layer I have, and all of my custom GPTs fit into one of these 4 layers. The final layer is what I call boots on the ground. And this is the tactical line staff who are actually feet on the ground doing the work. So that's how I do it. And basically what I do, I am always the human in the loop. I am always the adult in the conversation, and everything has to pass through a human to be validated and approved. And here's the thing, once we agree on the large vision, that narrows what can happen with the strategy. Once I and my leadership team agree on the strategy, that narrows down the tactics that are available to us. So basically, what I've done with human judgment is I've created the boundaries, and then this is where we can use AI and our humans to actually execute. And there's latitude. I don't care how an outcome is achieved, as long as the outcome is ethical, moral, legal, and it serves for my greater good. And of course, as I said, my overarching parameter is we must add value at every layer. So as an example, picking the right questions, I believe knowing the questions and understanding what are common, answering those questions is a way I add value to my audience. Question 6, how can I ensure my team feels empowered by these systems, not replaced by them? Now, this is really a great question because I think a lot of people, I hear people coming at it from the entirely wrong energy, and the energy you bring to this is what matters. So if your energy is, I want to control my team and I want them to follow my systems, and I will do whatever it takes to force them to do it, humans being humans, they will resist. Now, in that scenario, systems are something that we do to our employees, and that is pretty much the opposite of empowered. We've taken away their power and we've made them feel like little cogs in a big machine. Now, the secret is we, as a corporate entity, as a business, we build a culture of empowerment. And part of that is working with our teammates and we talked about cross-functional teams. We're working with them to build the systems they need to eliminate the friction from their lives. So if we empower people, and I said it earlier, I will repeat it, I don't particularly care about the path to get the outcome. What I care is that the outcome is achieved and it is done in the best possible way, looking at things like efficiency and effectiveness. As long as we get the right outcome and we still fall within the parameters set by our core objectives and our strategic plan, I'm going to give my team and trust them. I'm going to give them the latitude to get the outcome in the way they see best. So this is basically, if you think about it, we use collaboration and this is co-creation. In my experience, when people co-create the systems, they co-own them and they also feel there's a loyalty to it. They want to embrace the systems and they're going to work together to make sure they're optimized. So the energy I bring to this, and I hope you do as well, is I want to be a person who adds value. And believe it or not, I think if I add value to my customers, they're going to appreciate my company. And that adds value to my employees, who will further appreciate the company, which adds value to me. And collectively, we all add value back to our client. So to me, empowerment is fundamental, and approach it with your team as, I want to help you do better. I want you to work better, work smarter, work with less stress. We want to eliminate the bad as well as bring in the good. And by the way, I've actually seen people do this. Okay, we're allowing you to use AI. There was one example I heard. Individuals were required in a 9-hour shift, they were required to produce 4 blog posts for their clients. And then once they got AI in, it was the metric was changed to, now all of you are required to produce 10. Now, that can be good, that can be bad. In this case, anybody who didn't meet the new quotas was penalized. So that is, again, disempowering. So we want people to understand what their metrics are and how AI can help them achieve them. That is my number one empowerment tip: is how does this make my life easier? And nobody ever argues with, okay, here's how we make my life easier. Question 7, what kind of dashboard or command center should I create to monitor my systems? Now, we've talked about this a little bit. Mine is what I use, what works for me. I highly encourage you to start with what I have and tweak it and optimize it for yourself. So I am 100% Google based, which means I have a Google Drive folder. It's a shared folder, and everybody on my team has access to the folders they need. The access is appropriate. Some people only need to be read only. Some people are comment only. Some people are full-blown editors. And I have 3 subfolders. One is for attract, one is for convert, one is for deliver. Each one of those has systems inside and roles. And basically, at the top level, I have a Google Sheet, which more or less mirrors my my folder structure. And I have a spreadsheet that tracks which systems I have, who each system belongs to, who is the actual champion that's responsible for it. And everybody has ownership of something that impacts them. And then once we have that sort of high level granularity, we also track when was the last time this thing was updated. At the actual process level in my SOPs, each one has a little dashboard built in. It talks about who created it, who tested it, date it was approved, version control, updates since the last one. So basically, my command center is a series of folders, Google Docs, and spreadsheets. And that way I can keep it very much up to date. My high level spreadsheet tells me how current things are. If something's important or mission critical, I have color coding. So I always have a red, yellow, green. Red are the systems we need to maintain the most. Amber, yellow are the ones that so red we might look at monthly. Amber we might look at quarterly. And then the green ones, they're good to have, but they're not mission critical. We might look at those annually. So again, start with what I have, type it into ChatGPT and say, here's what I'm using as a template. Help me personalize it for myself. As an example, I know some people who absolutely have an irrational hatred of spreadsheets. I've seen grown men cry over them. use something else. My other tool, I love a good mind map. You can't go wrong with a good mind map. Or you can use workflow diagrams and things like that. Do what works for you and your team. And by the way, the more complexity you have managing your system, the least likely people are to keep it up to date. So absorb complexity, focus on simplicity. Now, you might have it a little easier. I don't know. You might want a poster board. I'm a weird combination of written and visual, so I love a good mind map. But whatever you do, make sure it makes sense and looks clean. Nothing worse than having it where you have to dig in 10 layers deep to find something. One thing I will share, if you subscribe to the best advice I've heard on the internet, any given website should never require more than 3 clicks to find something. So I would argue that your system or your command center should also have that sort of mantra that there's never more than 3 clicks to get to something we need. So think about how you're going to share this with people. Think about how you're going to control access and how you're going to track updates and things like that. By the way, I do love a good checklist. So I use a lot of combination of either Google Sheets or Google Docs. You can use some automation here. And if you're really, really organized, I've seen people, again, depends on your skill set, a really good, simple, we used to call them intranets. I don't know if that's still the term, don't care. A lot of this to me could and should be arranged like a good website. So I think you can use something like Notion to have an internal sort of dashboard and command center, or quite frankly, I've actually done this myself. You can have a personal, private, secure instance of something like WordPress and have an internal website that only people inside your domain can access. Do it what works for you, keep it secure, and keep it simple. Question 8. How do I know when to stop optimizing and start scaling new initiatives? This is actually an interesting question, and the way I approach this, I expect, I'm going to be blunt, most people obsess about optimizing and they ignore the cost. I'm going to call it the diminishing, diminishing returns. So I always look at it from this perspective. I have a Pareto principle tool that I use. So we've talked about this before. I will talk about it again. I use the third layer in of Pareto, which is applying 80-20 to 80-20 to 80-20. And the net number there is that approximately 1% of our effort yields 51.2% of our intended gain. Or if we take away 1% of our problems, it solves 51.2% of our complaints. So what I do is I do 3 rounds of 1%. And earlier I talked about my 90-day sprints and how every 90 days I have one big project for attract, one for convert, and one for deliver. What I do is I break that into 3 30-day mini sprints. And basically in the first 30 days, I'm looking to optimize 1% of something so that I can get 51% of the benefit. That's the first 30 days. And while I'm adding the positive to the top, I'm also taking away what's the 1% of friction that will save 51% of my errors, mistakes, complaints, what have you. And so that's an experiment. I've optimized it for 30 days. The next 30 days, I look at what's the next 1% added to the top to optimize, 1% taken off the bottom. And then the final 30 days, I do another 1% taking off the top, adding to the top, taking off the bottom to eliminate 50% of my friction and to optimize 50%. What that gives me over a 90-day sprint is I've put in highly leveraged 3% activity. And if you do the math, the gap closes. You should be 94% better, and your problem should be 94% less. So to me, that is as optimized as something needs to be. And so I'll usually start the next quarter with a new initiative. Now, your results are going to vary depending on how you look at your business and what you're doing in business. But I promise you, if every year you look at it, let's pretend the math is perfect. We have 4 90-day sprints. And yes, I know we have 365 days, so that doesn't happen, but that's okay. If we had 4 90-day sprints, in each of those 4 90-day sprints, we are taking off 1%, 1%, 1%. Over the course of the year, theoretically, we've eliminated, if we just use plain arithmetic, we've taken each month, we've improved by 1%. The 1% effort we've optimized, and the 1% effort we've eliminated. Theoretically, we should be getting closer and closer to an optimized business after a year. Now, here's where you start to do the math and you start to see what works for you. If you've only got one way to attract new customers, you've only got one way to convert, and you've only got one way to deliver, I would spend my very first 90 days optimizing those 3 things. And then I would use my second 90-day sprint to add a second. And I would use my third and my fourth to add a third and a fourth. So by the end of the year, you go from having one way each to attract, convert, and deliver. By the end of the year, you should have 4 of each. So I like a blend of optimizing what is. Obviously, if you're in business and you're successful at converting leads into prospects and you're good at delivering service and keeping them, optimize that and then add some new things. So again, we talked about safety, we talk about innovation. I do not like one of anything, whether it's how you attract, how you convert, how you deliver. One is the loneliest number for a reason, and it means you have a single point of failure. So if, for example, how you attract is SEO on Google with paid ads, and all of a sudden the Google algorithm changes, your business is at risk of failure. So we always want to have at least 2 paths each for attract, convert, deliver. So if you only have one path, optimize that path for the first 90 days and then start finding new paths and building them. And over time, you can A/B test, you can pick the winners, you can throw out the losers, but really, truly find as many ways as you can to bring in new clients, as many ways as you can to successfully convert those leads to clients, and of course, find ways to deliver wow and keep finding new ways. All right, question 9. What cultural habits or rituals can keep my team aligned with this new rhythm? So first things first, we need to reward our people for the behavior we want them to repeat. So having things like workshops to brainstorm areas of weakness, to identify things that Pareto principle and agree, here's what we should eliminate, automate, delegate. Um, we have built a lot of habits and rituals into what we do, and I encourage you to do this as well. Um, a lot of companies will get this sort of, I can't remember what the term is, but it's kind of we're all in this bubble, and we all know there's a problem, but nobody wants to admit it because it impacts our quarterly bonuses. I would reward people for identifying gaps, and as much as I would reward them for finding ways to fill them. Because let's be honest, if you don't see the gaps, you're not going to look for solutions. So there's a lot of company culture where people who do exceptional things, who solve problems, are rewarded, and the people who identify the problems are usually called complainers. So that would be my first thing, is to celebrate the gaps. And honestly, what I see as a gap, whatever that gap is, that is not a failure of our team. It's an opportunity for us to grow. So a few things, we've talked a lot about the mindset, the skill set, the gear set. And also we've talked about community and collaboration. I would build all of those habits in so that everybody is celebrating. Now, I want to be clear about a couple of things. Number one, we need to recognize people's learning styles. So some people are visual, some are auditory, some are reading and writing, and some are kinesthetic, and some only learn in community where they have discussion. So collaborate with your team, help them all identify how they learn. Use that as common vocabulary so that people can say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you're a visual learner. Let me try to explain that differently. Or let me draw you a diagram, what have you. But really, if you make it fun, we gamify it. That's why I have the 10 belt system and I have the 5 badges within each belt. I'm gamifying learning so that people build the confidence. And once they have the confidence, then they build the skills. And that helps them want to participate and move forward. So think about the cultural habits you need. And if you don't know what those are, again, we have a custom GPT that does this kind of work, but identify the habits or the rituals to help your team stay aligned. And by the way, for me, it always starts with the core objectives and then the strategic plan. And then it's how do I get my team to buy in? And if I may, if I have the right people on my team and they buy into the core objectives, the why we do what we do, how we define success, I really don't care how we get the outcomes that we need. And when I say I don't care, I literally am indifferent about it. I want to trust my team to perform at a high level and to get the results we need within the parameters we have. So if you empower them and you let them make decisions, again, get really granular and get into the details of what are the behaviors you want repeated and how do we reward that. And I mean that equally. You need to reward the positive behavior. I solved a problem, and the behavior of, oh, I identified a problem. I don't know how to solve it, but I know here's a problem and here's why. Why wouldn't you reward both sides of the equation, both the identifier and the solver of the problem? Question 10. How do I share these learnings to position myself as a thought leader without sounding robotic? The key here, and we have custom GPTs for a lot of this, people make decisions based on emotion, which means the better we share our emotion, and I'm not talking about, the rah rah, everything's fine. But if we're honest and we're sincere, people want to be part of a mission. It's fascinating. I've worked with a lot of US military veterans, and people get annoyed because veterans aren't just there for the paycheck. They need to believe in a mission. And people point that out as a flaw of veterans. I see it as a massive, massive advantage, because if a veteran believes in your mission, they will put their heart and soul into it, almost irrespective of how much you pay them. Now, obviously, you want to pay them well so that their mission to feed their family is served by helping you with your mission. However, I think a lot of businesses miss the power, even to the regular people out there, the regular employees, of having a vision that is shared and everybody believes in. I worked once upon a time at a large international company, billion-dollar company, and we had amazing coherence. The founder still had a say in the vision of the company. The executive team was really clear on the vision, and truly, the team members were all there because they believed in that mission. So honestly, and we have different tools. We need to communicate in the 5 learning styles. So we need to have some visual content for the visual learners. We need to have auditory for the auditory learners. Reading and writing, we need to have written materials for those people. For the kinesthetic, we need hands-on, tangible stuff. And then, of course, for the community learners, we need to have some community. So what I like to do personally, and I encourage you to do what works for you, I like to identify champions in each area, and I want to help them communicate in their area. And basically, instead of me trying to move everybody forward, I'm going to build local champions, ambassadors, whatever you want to call them. And basically, they're helping move the learnings forward. So I'll give you a couple of examples. But number one example is with the Pharos Digital Dojo. I am teaching the theory so that you guys can learn this, and gals. You can all learn it and apply it in your businesses. While I'm teaching you the theory, I'm also teaching you how to teach this. And the beautiful thing, and I love this, none of you will ever teach it exactly the way I do, to the same standard, to the same style, whatever it is. What I love is that each of you will take this away, you will make it your own, and by doing so, you will help those around you embrace it as well. So that is my passion. And I talked earlier that people want, so in marketing and sales, the mandate, the mantra is people buy on emotion and justify with logic. I believe that's the exact same thing with training. If you think about memory and neuroscience for a second, our memory is tied to emotions. And for good or bad, the stronger the emotion tied to a memory, the stronger it is in our memory. And interestingly, I saw a study that this is why women tend to have better memories than men. Women tend to feel things deeper and stronger than men do. Now, that is neuroscience. That's not me being gender biased or anything like that. But the reality is, if you can make people feel something about what you're sharing, they're going to remember it. So I built the Digital Dojo based on the premise that some people out there are more likely to have some sort of affiliation or association experience with martial arts. And most people I know, most people I've talked to, they understand the basic concept of a white belt. honestly, I don't talk to many people who've never heard of a white belt. And then the black belt, people see that and they understand that. And basically, all of the colors in between are really just little dials to help people follow their own path, and they know what they need to know when they need to know it. So think about your audience and think about what you can do to help them feel, and that's how you're going to help them learn it. And I promise, this is my mission in life. If I can help others, that ripple will spread over and over again. So that is my foundation. Those are the frequently asked questions in the red belt zone. If you have not, I encourage you, take our white belt. It is free. If you've made it this far in the theory course, I invite you to join our actual dojo. We meet weekly. The basic level are white, yellow, and orange. We meet Mondays from 11 till noon Eastern time. The white belt is free. We want you to build up a use case. We want you to determine your return on investment, not what we think it is, but yours. And when you're ready, we invite you to skill up and move up the belt levels. And you'll see the progression. Our lowest levels are $100 a month. Our top tier is $1,000. And really the reason for that is we believe that the more you use it, the better you use it, the more you're part of our community, you're going to see an increasing return on investment. And yes, we cap it at $1,000 a month because at this level, you're now advocating and you're teaching others. We want to help you get really good at being a teacher, and we want to recognize that you're contributing back to the community. So therefore, we're not charging more once we get to the black or double black belt stage. If you want to join us, visit pharosbusiness.com/digital-dojo. Thank you. And if you have any questions we didn't cover, I'd love to hear them. I love questions.